This mini-series is intended to help clarify for Canadians some of the key issues swirling around the so-called LAV scandal. A separate video looks at the issue of prosecutorial independence, which is at the heart of the dispute, a dispute which saw former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould and her colleague Jane Philpott resign from Cabinet. This video is intended to bring some clarity to a separate issue, namely the Prime Minister's claim that he was motivated throughout this dispute by a desire to protect jobs, most notably the 9,000 jobs engineering giant SNC-Lavalin has in Canada. The analysis offered here is based on an article for MLI by Philip Cross and Ian. In that article, Cross and Lee argue that economic analysis reveals there is no jobs-related reason to intervene on behalf of SNC-Lavalin. The number of jobs potentially at risk is minuscule or non-existent, and the company itself says its business is sound. SNC would easily manage a ban on federal projects, just as it has flourished despite being banned from World Bank projects since 2013 for corrupt practices. Yes, SNC employs almost 9,000 people across Canada. This, however, represents a minuscule 0.05% of Canada's total of 18,930,000 jobs. SNC has already shed over 11,000 jobs in Canada since 2013 with no visible economic impact. The threat to move SNC's headquarters is almost as trivial from a macroeconomic perspective. 700 head office jobs account for 0.3% of the head office jobs in Canada, and only 1.6% of Montreal's total headquarters employment. No one in the federal government has been able to produce a written report on the economic impact of job losses at SNC because the impact is so minimal. Moreover, very few jobs were ever at risk. Even in the highly unlikely event SNC disappeared overnight, the need for the services it provides would not disappear, as the CEO of SNC, Neil Bruce, has publicly recognized. SNC does not create the demand for infrastructure projects such as dams, roads, and bridges, any more than Loblaws creates people's appetite for food. SNC and Loblaws satisfy demand. They do not create it. If these companies did not exist, others would step in to meet the demand. There are only a handful of companies that can implement infrastructure projects from their design to the actual building. If SNC disappeared, its highly valuable employees would be snapped up by these other firms to do that work in Canada. SNC itself publicly states its operations were performing well even after the Federal Justice Department announced it would not grant an exemption from prosecution. Every quarter, when it releases its financial results, SNC, like every other publicly owned company, offers a written analysis of its business conditions and outlook. SNC's latest such analysis not only did not mention any existential threat to its operations from federal prosecution, it noted that its business was performing very well, with $10 billion of revenue earned in 50 countries and $15 billion of back orders. If SNC did tell the federal government that a ban on bidding for new federal projects would significantly hamper its operations in Canada, why is no one pointing out it is telling its shareholders a completely different story? SNC's continued success shows that being barred from bidding on projects by one public institution has a negligible impact on the operations of such a large multinational. Since 2013, SNC has been banned from bidding on World Bank projects because of its involvement in corruption and bribery. This has not stopped SNC from thriving. If SNC was banned from bidding on federal government projects for a decade, it would still be free to bid on provincial and municipal work, representing nearly 90% of Canada's infrastructure spending by government. Moreover, the federal government is reportedly considering changing its policy to soften or remove the ban. Nor was there ever any real chance of SNC moving its headquarters abroad. Quebec's giant pension fund, the Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec, owns 20% of SNC's stock. The Caisse has a written agreement with SNC that it cannot move its headquarters out of Montreal before 2024. The Caisse showed in 2012 that it is willing to flex its muscle to stop foreign interests from intruding into Quebec's strategic business interests, when it succeeded in stopping Lowe's from taking over the Rona hardware store chain at the time. The bottom line is this: reasoned economic analysis shows that claims of a danger of significant job losses if SNC were not granted a deferred prosecution agreement were at best grossly exaggerated and at worst a political smokescreen. In no case was it a justification for interfering in prosecutorial discretion, a key element in our independent justice system and the rule of law, which Canadians so rightly prize. I'm Brian Lee Crowley for the Macdonald-Laurier Institute.